Wake up, Twins territory. It's Tuesday night, and Seth and I are live for Twins Hangouts. We have been undergoing all sorts of audio issues, as you can tell by the look on Seth's face with the landline corded phone making this happen. Seth, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. We're going to get started here on time, and but definitely not going so well so far. So hopefully, maybe you can get a little feedback in that discussion area, and we can find out if this is working.
Yeah, we'd like to know if there's anybody listening live to please tweet one of us if you can hear us. I guess if we don't get a single tweet in the next 5 minutes, we'll probably just say forget it, because if you can't hear us say this, you won't tweet us. Right, Seth? So tell me about that corded phone you're talking on. How old is that phone?
Honestly, that's 5 years old. I never used my nobody even knows my phone number, which is totally fine. I just don't even answer it. So I don't even know why I have it anymore. But I guess it comes in a package with the landline, the cable, TV, and the cable internet. So I just keep all three of them.
And it's interesting because nobody calls you. I actually tried to call you, and it never ever rang. It just said it's not accepting. You're not accepting callers right now. So maybe you don't actually have a landline.
It rings all the time, though, unless it's just. Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't had a landline since I was like 13. I'm sending out a tweet because we still have had no responses that anybody's actually listening. We do have a couple.
On that since we were 25 minutes.
No, we have some live viewers, so let us know, because we'd like to know. Otherwise, we're going to keep talking and have great conversation, and no one will ever be able to hear it, which would kind of suck for all of us. So let us know, please, soon. If you can't tweet us, leave a message in the sorry about that, in the Twins Hangout comment box, and then we'll be able to go from there. Or if you can leave the Q&A, I'm opening that for this actual Hangout. Let us know. So the fact that there are people viewing makes me want to think that someone can hear us. Which, I mean, usually it's only one of us talking at a time anyway. So you're gonna get half, I guess, if that's how we go.
Which, if we go for like 2.5 hours again, that's like pretty good. So, to listen to this show, half of it's going to be missing. It's pretty good.
That's true. So let's just jump right in and start talking. I think the news of the day is that the Futures game rosters were announced. Now, Seth, are you planning on coming to that game with me or not?
I don't know. What do you?
I'll charge you face value, which is not very much.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Actually, we won't talk afterwards unless we're talking on the phone, your corded phone and my headphones, because it's a one-way conversation right now.
Really?
I mean, for me and you, if we just try to talk on Hangouts, we can't do it. That's the whole issue.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you're going to be the first person in the history of the world to go straight from corded phone to iTunes. You know that, right?
Possible. I can't imagine.
I'd say it's probably.
Full time.
So let's talk Futures game.
All right.
You made the announcement last night that Big Spoon Vargas was going to make his appearance.
Yeah, it was quite the breaking news when you look at his Facebook page. He posted the letter that came to him saying he had been invited to the Futures game. So it was really some great reporter stuff. Yeah, and I still put "it appears" because it hadn't been official yet. Maybe it was just a letter saying, "Haha, just kidding." But no, I mean, last night he looked pretty excited in the picture, so I kind of assumed when it said 2014 Futures game on it, even if it was in Spanish, that it was a good news for him.
Was the letter was actually in Spanish?
It was in Spanish, yeah. So I didn't take the time to translate or anything.
That's interesting. I mean, that it's in Spanish, I guess it makes sense, but it's just
Yeah, yeah, and then this morning, Mr. J.O. Barrios also kind of gave it away to his Twitter followers. Twitter. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting that the rest of the world probably had to wait, but Twins fans knew a little bit early.
now. Do any of those moves surprise you?
No, I mean, I think we kind of expected Vargas. I mean, I don't think that's a surprise. The thing that surprised me was that the Twins had two players that are going to appear on the Team World team in the Futures game, whereas there's nobody representing Team USA, and I think some people may have thought Trevor May or Alex Meyer might have been guys that could have fit into that category. But yeah, two guys from Puerto Rico actually, which of course is a U.S. Commonwealth, so it's kind of a tricky spot. Maybe they could have one on each team, but they're both playing on the World team.
I wondered when it was announced, or that we assumed that both of those guys were going to be on it, if they would be playing for the World team or if they'd be playing for the U.S. team. Because obviously, I mean, Puerto Rico's not in the U.S., but they're subjected to the draft rules. So just the way that it worked out, I figured they'd probably both be on the same team. I didn't know if they would take two guys on the same team. But let's talk a little bit about Vargas. Obviously, he's had a pretty good year. He did the short season, and then the short season in Cedar or in Beloit at the time because of the suspension, and then had an okay year last year in Fort Myers before making the jump up to New Britain and playing extremely well. Does it say much for him as a prospect when you look at the past first basemen that have been in this game? They've not always been prospects, and he's not a top 100 prospect. At least he wasn't in the preseason. Not included in many or any of the top 10 Twins prospect lists. Where does he rank as a prospect in all of baseball, in the Twins system? Where do you put him right now?
Well, I think before the season, certainly he wasn't in the top 20. In fact, yesterday I happened to look, and I had ranked him 17th going into the season, or actually after last offseason. But getting added to the 40-man really seems to have propelled him in terms of confidence, in terms of taking bigger swings and all that kind of stuff. And in doing so, I really think he's propelled himself onto prospect maps. Now, I would say he's still, closer to 150 than to 100 in terms of overall. But in terms of Twins prospects, especially with maybe a Josmil Pinto or a Danny Santana dropping off the list here shortly due to number of plate appearances, I mean, he's right around that number 10 Twins prospect. So, I mean, he's certainly made a bigger name for himself, and he's really having his best all-around year when you look at, the power production, the batting average, the on-base percentage, just all around. He's having a tremendous year.
Do you make much of the fact, though, that the first basemen that typically come into this game are not there's not a ton of first baseman prospects in baseball. So you're saying Vargas is 150. What's his future as a Twin? I guess what I'm saying, or what I'm trying not to say, but alluding to the fact is, I guess I'm not real sold on Vargas as a prospect. I'm happy that he's having a great year, but I think there's a lot of question marks. Obviously, he's not a defensive first baseman. He's a big target. But does he have a future? Uh, does he have a future with the Twins as a big league regular? Does he have a future at all as a big league regular?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of he's seen as a lumber, big, slow, plodding. He's written 2 or 3 years. Not David Ortiz with the bat, his manner. So, I mean, there's not a lot of chance that he's a great first baseman. He's a guy who could play there nowhere else. But with his bat, I mean, like I said before, he's done the batting average thing. His strikeouts are actually quite low when you look at it. So, I mean, that's a positive to be certain. He's walking at a decent rate. He's hitting a lot of line drives. He's taking big swings. I don't know that he'll ever be a star, so to speak, especially playing first base and DH. But he's a guy that I think can be a big league regular for a long period of time. I mean, there's still questions to be answered, and will his athleticism or lack thereof affect him over time? But at this point, and what he's doing at Double A, there's no reason to think he can't at least be a solid major league contributor. It's a bat.
So fast forward to September. He gets a September call-up because he's a 40-man guy. Yes or no?
Oh, was that a question? Okay. Yeah, I would certainly think so, especially if he's hitting 300 at Double A all year. There's no reason not to bring him up. It'll be interesting to see where the Twins are in September. Will they have traded, say, Kendry Morales or Josh Willingham? But I don't see any reason that it would get him up for 3 weeks of the season at the end, and maybe even get into a handful of games, or depending on where the Twins are, maybe he starts for 2 weeks.
Okay, so then we get to the spring. He's obviously going to be in big league camp, impressing people with his power. First base he's not going to be the first baseman. We know that. So is he competing for DH at bats as a bench bat? I mean, it's hard to carry a guy on the bench that offers you no defensive flexibility and no, nothing but power. I mean, so he's a pinch hitter.
Hitomi Kama Jim.
I mean, is that what he is?
Worst case scenario, but they're not going to have him skip AAA to be a bench player. I mean, that would be silly.
So he could be down in Rochester. I'm fine with that.
And absolutely. He's probably going to be, at least to start the season, but I do think he goes into spring training with an opportunity to be the DH. As we know, Morales isn't going to be there. Most likely Willingham will be there. But I assume that at least Archie in the outfield. Buxton's probably not going to be up quite yet at the beginning of the year. So there aren't quite the names and the players that, I mean, I truly believe he has a chance going into spring training to be the DH. But, I mean, I would fully expect he will begin the year in Rochester next year.
Did you read, and I don't remember where I saw it, but there was a mention of the fact that maybe the Twins, even if they only sign Morales for the remainder of this year, that they could trade him potentially at the deadline, but they would be interested in re-signing him for next year. Did you happen to see that report? They can't. They can't. So he didn't spend all year there.
I don't expect him to be back. I'm not saying he won't be, but I would be surprised. At the same time, there isn't like some sort of heir apparent at DH that's going to be ready opening day.
Yeah,
so I mean, there's no harm in it.
Josmil Pinto. He's your DH.
Well, it's true. It's not really a catcher.
Right. Could we see, as we get into July, do you think there's any chance that we see Vargas become a trade chip?
There's always a chance. positions. That's certainly not it's possible. I mean, it would really take the right team who's needing either a first baseman or just a designated hitter going forward. I don't know that you would get a ton for Vargas, but personally, I'd probably keep him just because I'd rather keep that power. I mean, when it comes to power, he's got as much power as Adam Walker and almost as much as Miguel Sano. So, I mean, this is not a guy you just want to hand over.
No, but I mean, if the Twins are in contention, they'd likely make some sort of move. I don't know. There's speculation that maybe they need a stopgap center fielder. Maybe they need a unbelievable. Are you watching the Twins game?
Have it on.
That's oh, I thought I caught it. Oh.
Nah, man. Just at the right time. So.
Oh, I thought that was a catch. Anywho, I just think as we get into July that we're gonna be talking about potentially, and I don't know for sure, but we're gonna be talking about a team that maybe will want to make a move or two, and if they're buyers, they could be looking for a center fielder. They could be looking for a starting pitcher. And Vargas could just be one of those guys that doesn't have an obvious place to be for the Twins, but he can use this summer and this futures game to kind of enhance his stock and his trade value.
Certainly, I mean he's making a name for himself this year, both in New Britain and futures game. He could have a nice second half, and we'll just see what happens.
Okay, let's talk about the other guy that's in the futures game, Jose Berrios. Obviously, still in Fort Myers. Played again last night. Played very well again last night. Hasn't been moved up. Now I think it's been the stats I used were his last 10 games because if you go into the minor league website, they have the last 10 games, so I just used those. Even though 10 games ago was one of his rougher starts of the year. So really his last 9 games, I think he's 7-0. His K per 9 is well over, probably his double digits. I think I lost Seth in this conversation. But you're talking about a guy that is making a name for himself, as a top 100 prospect already, which he was. But now you're talking about a guy that is being touted by Jason Parks as as a better prospect right now than Cole Stewart, and that's a pretty big deal. Seth is not here to get this confirmation, but we got confirmation from John Will 089561341, and he says that he is listening live and that Seth should know that 1980 wants their phone back. That is fantastic. Seth, can you hear me on the phone? Can I put you, okay. Seth, nobody can hear Seth on the Hangout, but I'm talking to him on his 1980 phone. Seth, I'm sending you invites. Are you getting my invites? Seth is currently trying to get back into the Hangout. This has been a fantastic night for this, and I even had my new opener that I stole from Full House. If you guys picked up on that, wake up, Twins territory.
Very nice.
Hey, and Seth is back in the house. Seth, 1980 called, and they want their phone back. Well, I think if you were smart, you would give that phone back. But you know what? It's emergency, right?
You never know when you're going to need it.
The corded phone, making a re-entrance into civilization. So Berrios has been a stud. He's been a stud for a long time, and he still hasn't gotten promoted. Do you foresee him sticking it out with the Miracle, having them work the rotation the way it'll be so that he can make his one inning and then from Minneapolis fly right up to New Britain and continue his career there?
A couple of people I've talked to, guys out there that he pitched against Northern Division teams, and they'd like him to see a couple of the Southern Division teams maybe once more or a couple more times through. I can't imagine that he will be with the Miracle real long. That said, I think the Miracle are in a stretch in which they will have played 16 games in 15 days, so he can make 3 starts. Right now they've got David Hurlbutt, who is injured and on the disabled list. He told me last week he got a cortisone shot and things are getting better. Brett Lee is also on the disabled list. He said he's just started throwing on the mound. He should be ready, he's hoping, by about July 4th. So right now with those 2 guys out and no one really in Cedar Rapids pushing their way to come up, I kind of think as soon as Lee and Hurlbutt are ready to come back, there's a good chance that that might be the time in which J.O. Barrios would get that opportunity, and that is very closely tied to that Futures game timeline.
Moving on from the Futures game, because I think we've talked about Barrios in depth basically every week, and I don't know that we need to say much more, but
he's good.
Yeah, I mean he is, and the one thing that needs to be, I think, that needs to be said about him every week is that he has the mentality that he's a crazy hard worker. Even in the off season, it looked like he was heading out every morning at like 5 a.m. to make his run, doing just crazy workouts on the beach, just kind of a workout monster. And when you have a guy like that, I think, it's the opposite of what we've seen with Aaron Hicks, where the preparation, he's got all the physical tools, Hicks does, but the preparation hasn't been great, and we have, not seen him play well. On the other hand, Barrios doesn't look extremely physically gifted. I mean, he's a 5'11", 6-foot guy, yet he's got a cannon and gets everything out of his ability. So, an interesting guy to watch for sure, to see how the year goes. He didn't have a great year in Cedar Rapids last year, but he's obviously answered the bell this year and has done everything he can possibly do to force the Twins' hand, which I think is fantastic.
A lot of people kind of almost complain that the Twins only had 2 people in the Futures game. That is pretty normal. The Twins once had 1. I think the rest of it is their only guy a few years back. A lot of people thought, Trevor May or Alex Meyer, both are probably higher ranked prospects than Vargas is, and one of them can certainly be on the U.S. team. Let's be honest, Alex Meyer right now is that pitching is star. Although I know that's obviously very short-sighted with his most recent 3 starts, but Trevor May certainly deserves it. I don't think anyone would question that, but at the same time, you look at the roster, there's only 8 or 9 pitchers on each roster, and they have to fill it appropriately. So, not a big deal. The other thing to remember is if Byron Buxton and Miguel Sano were around, it's a good chance both of them would have played. So it does speak well to the Twins farm system.
There's 50 players that are on the roster, so obviously with 30 teams, not everybody's getting 2. I did see somebody say that the Cubs or maybe the Mets, was it the Mets last year, had 3. Also, there are players. I haven't looked. I glanced at the rosters. I saw Carlos Correa was there. He's obviously not going to be playing. I'd assume that they would have an injury replacement for him, I guess I wondered aloud, or a tweet, as I said on Twitter, if that replacement could potentially be Polanco, because they have one second baseman, three shortstop. Uh, I don't know how feasible that is, but that was something that I saw and wondered. Um, but yeah, to not have a U.S. guy, I guess, is surprising. I'm not going to complain about it because they still got their two. Um, but at that point, I think if the Twins submitted 6 names, who were the 4 that they submitted that didn't get invited?
You got to think, man. The other one, Alex, is just if you were to be in the big leagues at that time, it's him. Too much, but it may also be a sign that when you have plans to maybe call up Trevor May at a certain time and didn't push for him as much as maybe others. I know that MLB and others make that decision, but certainly if Twins went and said, we really rather not, but if you do have that's for us, that's gonna be something too. And I'm not saying that's what happened.
Right. That was a thought that crossed my mind as well. But again, I think one of the other things that I really thought happened was if you submit a first baseman's name, because typically your top prospects aren't first baseman. So, you know, I just remember last year, a couple years ago, the first baseman that played weren't even. I mean, they were marginal prospects at best. So it'll be interesting to see as the roster obviously continues to develop and change over the next couple of weeks. But it's exciting to see that those two guys, and congratulations to both of them. Not that I think they're listening, but if they happen to be, we should probably brush up on our Spanish.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, we could hear each other. Let's move on, talk a little bit about the roster formations of transitions and transactions. If you bet on the roster and payroll page, there's some things that I've been working on lately, and the way that the website's in its current state, I'm kind of limited to what I can do. So I've been working on some other stuff, and it's more of it's a Google Doc, so it takes you away from Twins Daily, but it's no, but I'm working on getting it onto the site. It's just not set up right now to handle that type of format. So I think people will enjoy that. It'll be undergoing changes. I'll be updating the other one less because it takes a lot more time to do that, and I lose guys, and there's some issues right now, so I'm working through that. But it's linked down in the comments. It's just a plain Google site, and I'd like feedback on that too, because obviously, I like to do what people want to see. So a couple of things that have happened. Mark Hamburger was brought up from New Britain to Rochester last week, or late last week, early this week, and he's a guy that could figure into the Twins' bullpen plans at some point. Obviously, he's got some major league experience, dealt with the suspension and that sort of thing. The other move that happened this morning, J.D. Williams was activated and Joel Lycan was released from Cedar Rapids. And then obviously the other news out of Cedar Rapids, out of the cities, and affects Cedar Rapids, is that Nick Birdie officially signed his contract and will report to Cedar Rapids and into their bullpen on Friday. So they'll probably be, at the minimum, sending somebody down or potentially releasing another bullpen arm from there. You woohooed because you're going to be down there.
When we had last week, we did talk a lot about other events. But they do have stuff going on. Fireworks both Friday and Saturday. Kids run the bases, get autographs from players, things like that after the game on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to getting down there. My brother and I are going down, and really looking forward to it. In fact, Birdie will be there at that point. It's going to be a fun time. And if people are going, send me a tweet and maybe we can meet up in the hallway or something.
And the best thing is you don't have to buy Seth a drink because he's not going to drink it.
Wasted.
So
Yeah.
buy Seth a drink, offer him the
Not
drink. He'll say, I can't drink that. I'm not going to drink that. And then you just bought yourself a drink. But you can feel better because it's like you bought Seth one. I won't be going down this weekend. I'm going to head down the weekend after the All-Star break for a Saturday, Sunday deal. But I couldn't get down there this week. I got some birthdays in the family that I have to be around for. So should we take our minor league spin right now, Seth Stows?
Where would you like to start?
Well, I think let's start at the top. Start with the Red Wings.
All right.
Obviously, has Chris Herman? He wasn't called up, correct?
He was not. We haven't heard that. Probably not.
Because we know that the Twins don't send people from anywhere to the city, anywhere east of Minneapolis, St. Paul to the West Coast during a road trip. That's crazy talk. Okay.
All right. So that's it tonight. Scranton Wilkes-Barre 7-5. Well, we started 0 to 3.41. He gave up 3 runs on 3 hits in 5 innings. He It's 1 inning, gave up just 1 hit. Ryan Presley, he went 2 innings, 2 runs on 1 hit. It was a home run, his first home run allowed this year. He walked 2 and struck out 3. And Michael Tonkin picked up the save with a 1-2-3 night. Offensively, Eric Ferris, he was 3 for 5 with a, I don't know what that says, but he also stole 13th base. Danny Ortiz, 2 for 5 with a double. And Chris Colabello, 2 for 5. He had a double and a home run. I got a message from him earlier today, and he just said, yeah, those just got to quit catching it when I hit it at him. So, apparently he found a way today, and that was hitting it over them. So,
was it out?
That double and a 3-run homer. No, I'm sorry, no, it was actually a long home run to left field.
Good. I mean, I like home runs, but if he's pulling them, that must mean something good, right?
Yeah, it does definitely sound like he's been hitting the ball a lot better the last couple of weeks. After, when he went down, he was definitely still struggling. So, yeah, it's good to see the numbers kind of piling up here, too.
New Britain, they had their winning streak snapped yesterday.
Yep, they had won 11 in a row.
I had figured that was going to happen because in the couple of years that I've been helping write the minor league reports, whenever there's a long winning streak, it always gets snapped when I get to write about it.
How about that? But it's their new winning streak.
Perfect.
You have to win 2 in a row before you can call it a streak. So it's a 1-game winning streak. Rockets who beat Altoona 5-2 tonight. Through this 5th home run. 12th home run. Also, Brad Boyd 2 hits, 4 for 2 with 2 walks. We'll talk more about him, I'm sure, in just a minute. Pat Dean was on the mound. DRA is just 4.22, but he'd improved to 6-2. He gave up 2 runs, just 1 of them earned on 7 hits over 6 2/3 innings. Didn't walk anyone and struck out 2. Cole Johnson got the next 4 outs, 2 of them on strikeouts. And Lester Oliveros picked up his 12th save. I gave up 1 hit in a scoreless 9th inning. By the way, our guy we were just talking about him, Kenny Vargas, he's 0 for 10 over his last 3 games and it's dropped his average to about 318. So, maybe we got to stop talking about him so much.
Sell high. I'm kidding. So let's talk about Aaron Hicks a little bit.
Well, I think the big news that came out over the weekend when suddenly he had a hit in his first at bat on Saturday night, and Julie, the play-by-play guy for the Rockettes, tweeted that Aaron Hicks had a line drive single batting left-handed. And apparently it came out, and they started talking about it on Sunday with Terry Ryan, with Ron Gardenhire, that basically it's his career. He needs to make those decisions for himself, where he feels comfortable. And I think, we're probably making too big a deal out of it. Obviously, a lot of people that are stat heavy certainly think, right-handed is the way to go, but, at the same time, it's his decision, and he has to live with it, good or bad. So I don't actually have a huge problem with him doing it. And I kind of think, he has 20 days that he can spend rehabbing in New Britain. And my opinion is after those 20 days, they should just send him to New Britain, leave him in New Britain, and let him continue to play because, frankly, that's the last place where he had a extended run of success. His 2012 season with the Rockettes was pretty impressive. He filled box scores, filled the stat page in every category. And hopefully he can get back to that. And it may have cost 2 years, but if he can get back to what he did that year, continue to progress, maybe it's all for the better at the end of the day. How's that for optimistic?
I think you're very optimistic. My issue is not that Aaron Hicks is batting both right now. My issue is that things weren't going well. He goes to Gardy or however this played out and says, I'm not confident batting left-handed. Great. It's a decision that I think a lot of people wanted him to make a long time ago. Well, he made that decision. And I want to say that Gardy's comment then was, ideally he could go down to the minor leagues and he can work on that there, but we just don't have another center fielder right now. He gets hurt, goes down there, and then decides, well, maybe I'll go back to doing the switch hitting thing. Make up your mind. I guess the thing that I tweeted out earlier was at some point someone needs to say, no, you can't do that. Or this is what you're going to do. Because it seems like Aaron Hicks does what Aaron Hicks wants to do. You can't spell Aaron without the word no. I mean, it's backwards, right?
Yeah.
But someone needs to say, here's how it's going to be, dude, and this is how we're going to move forward. You abandon it in the middle of the season, and then you decide to unabandon it 3 weeks later. That's messed up, and part of it can be blamed on the Twins and their handling of him, and I put them at fault. But if Aaron Hicks is as professional as he should be, this does never happen. That's where my problem is.
Like I said, anyone who looks at the numbers would probably agree with him just going right. But again, we can talk about the preparation and all those names and words that they chose to use about him. We don't know. None of us knows. None of us know what really happened behind closed doors and that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, you know what? He's in control of his career, and he should be. He shouldn't listen to anyone. You can listen and take advice, you can do whatever, but it's your career. At the end of the day, it's his career, and he needs to make that decision, and he needs to feel good about that. And, at one point, yeah, maybe he thought that was the right decision, if that really was his decision. And now, he wants to switch hit. And I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm just saying good for him for kind of standing up for him and himself and his own career.
I think we're going to disagree on that one. And I'm fine with
that. Well, and that's fine. I just believe in people having their own.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it may cost him stuff, but at least he's doing it his way.
Yeah, but that's the worst part. They put people in a position. But they put people in a position organizationally to help a player develop. And maybe the Twins are at fault. I mean, they're not without fault. But you have to be confident that the people that are instructing you are instructing you correctly. And if they were instructing him to maybe think about giving up switch hitting, and I don't know. The story is that he said he wasn't confident, but I can't imagine that there wasn't some pushing of the organization. He should take responsibility and he should make that move, but at the same time, the people that are charged with helping him develop probably didn't say, hey, give it 3 weeks and see what you think. if you're going to make a move, you need to stick with the move. Then he should have made it in the first place. But you
Well,
can't
but you can't know that in
exactly.
3 weeks. Well, you have to know anything too. So
But 3
I don't
weeks
know.
is not trying. 3 weeks is not trying.
Well, not.
So
Is it the kind of move that you make mid-season either? I mean,
no, absolutely not. But I guess my thought is what you're going to do is you're going to say, Aaron, you're not going to abandon switch hitting in the middle of the year. But what you are going to do is you're going to go to Puerto Rico or Venezuela or wherever you want to go this winter, and you're going to be a right-handed hitter. And when you report to spring training, you're going to be a right-handed hitter. If you're not confident as a left-handed hitter, that's what you're going to do. Is there an issue with
okay,
that?
fine. They can tell him all he wants, and again, it's up to him at the end of the day. And you know, if that means that they're going to trade him because they disagree with what he's doing, well, that's Twins' prerogative to do too. So,
I wouldn't trade him.
um,
I'd leave him in the minor leagues.
well, that's the other option, and then you just lose him for nothing. So,
No, you don't lose him for nothing. This is a second option year.
yeah,
He hasn't
you
even
got a year
actually
and a
been
half.
optioned. So you have the rest of this year and next year to see if he can develop on his own. That's the choices he made. Develop on his way, and then he can compete for an outfield job in 2016.
Yeah, and if he does it earlier, then you just leave him in the minor leagues. If he's hitting 380 and getting on base 50% of the time, you just leave him down there as a punishment. I mean, to
No,
me, he's an adult. He gets to make that decision, and
right,
the other side gets to make their decision. You can't just
right.
tell people what to do.
I mean, you kind of can when you give
And you,
them, a million seven or $1,000,008. Then they're kind of the property of the Twins. But that's not the point. The point is that
tend to disagree with that.
he needs to force their hand, and he's forced their hand a number of times, but it's not been the positive.
Too.
I,
Like I said,
I
I think
agree.
at the end of the 20 year, he gets set up. He doesn't come back up until he gets set up. I think
Perfect.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
However he gets there, I don't know. I mean, whether he switch hits and that's what's going to be more comfortable and that's what's going to make him more successful in his mind, then he does that. If it's the other direction, that's his decision.
Right. I think he forced the Twins to make him the everyday center fielder at the beginning of last year.
Right.
But since then he hasn't. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of positive. I mean, obviously,
Right.
is there physical ability there? There absolutely is. He remade his body over the offseason. I thought that was impressive. But as far as the hitting, is the approach and the swing and all that stuff, that really hasn't changed even throughout the minor leagues. I mean, the first time I saw him, he was batting left-handed, and it didn't look right at all. But how much has he developed? And that, again, you can put that on the Twins. You can put that on him. I guess I don't know. But let's keep moving because otherwise we're going to have another 3-hour show. And this isn't, we're not Gilligan. So let's keep it under 3.
There you go.
Moving down to Fort Myers.
Five of his nice stuff. After 10 days, he's hitting 343 and 35 at bats. Tonight he had 2 doubles, his 7th and 8th in those 10 games. He was 3 for 5. Adelin Mejia 3 for 4. Dalton Hicks 2 for 4 with a walk, and Travis Harrison doubled for the 20th time this year. DJ Baxendale back on the mound. He gave up 5 runs on 8 hits, 2 walks, and 4 2/3 innings. Steven Gruber came in and threw 2.1 innings without giving up a run, despite giving up 2 hits and 2 walks. He did strike out 3. Tyler Jones came in, gave up a run on 4 hits and a walk over 2 innings. He struck out 4. And then Mason Melitakis, he got the save with 3 strikeouts in the bottom of the 10th. Not bad for Mr. Melitakis.
No, I mean, and it's pretty fair to say that he's seen the end of his starting days, right?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much been told that with him, with Matt Summers, their days at this point going forward are in the bullpen. You and I talked about this a lot, and I think we both generally agree. The if a guy has a chance to start, you let him start for a while. The worst thing that happens there is they uh, develop the ability to throw 3-4 innings, and they get the opportunity to throw more of their secondary pitches. And worst case, you throw them back in the bullpen and let them kind of, air it out a little bit and go from there. I think, Melitakis, to me, was the right timeline. I think they waited too long a little bit on Carlos Gutierrez. That's one example a lot of guys like to go back to and said, why didn't they move it to the bullpen sooner? I don't disagree with that. With Melitakis, they gave him the full year last year as a starter. Started this year with a handful of starts, and then at some point, whether it was a discussion or whatever, they made the decision that he was going to the bullpen, and I think he's fine with that.
Along with the Miracle update, now that game happened like at 9 o'clock our time or something crazy. It was a very, very early game, and I don't know if it happened before or after our show last week, but they clinched the first half title, so they made the playoffs. Regardless of how they do for the rest of the year, they could lose their next 45 games and still qualify for the playoffs, which is kind of weird minor league baseball, but that's how it works. There's no first half playoff. There's just a first half champ, and I think even the second place in some leagues qualify for the playoffs at the end of the year. So regardless of how the team ends up, they will be playing in meaningful baseball in the minor leagues. It's early September, so that'll be fun to watch. It's always fun to watch when a minor league team makes the playoffs. I think, was it 2 years ago that they had like 3 or 4 teams in the playoffs?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. A couple years where it was pretty rough, but I know Miracle will be there for the second year. Rochester has a chance. Of course, Elizabethton always has a chance.
Right. Before we get to Elizabethton, let's just recap the day in Cedar Rapids. We talked briefly about Cedar Rapids. Obviously, Seth's going to be there later this week. Before Seth does that, make sure that you download us on iTunes, leave us some feedback. You can comment on the YouTube page. You can do all that fun stuff. You can give us questions in the Q&A here on Twitter or on the article that's on Twins Daily. Also, there was one other point that I was going to make, and I don't even remember what it was at that point. So, gosh darn it all. That's all I got. Take it to Cedar Rapids.
Peoria, they were playing 5 hits in the game. Zach Colonels within about the last week. Ethan Milton got the start. Came up 3 runs on 6 hits and 2 walks in 5 innings. He struck out 5. Lefty Brandon Bixler struck out 2 in 2 scoreless innings. And Dallas Deland walked 1 and struck 1 out in scoreless innings as well. So again, just a reminder, this weekend is Twins weekend in Cedar Rapids. If you have a chance, get down there. It'll be a lot of fun. We've given a lot away and a lot of things for fans. So, plus fireworks shows are always fun. Kind of like zoos. I like zoos and fireworks shows.
Zoos? Like where you go look at animals?
I love going to the zoo.
That's phenomenal.
It's kind of a stereotypical, something the kids typically like. But I always like going to the zoo, especially with my daughter. And fireworks shows, when you're younger, not a big deal. But now I go there and I sing along to the music and go ooh and ah a lot.
So what's your favorite zoo, getting off topic?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Minnesota Zoo. I mean, I like going.
If you drive into South Dakota, what's the is it Sioux Falls that's right on the border? They have a pretty big zoo. We went there last year, and the tiger that was there tried to pee on me. It's a true story. Yeah. I mean, this is totally off topic, but I had my youngest in his little stroller, and the tiger was just laying in the corner. It was 105 degrees, and I just went as close as I could get to it, which was still 10 feet away, and just stared to see who would blink first. And instead of blinking, the tiger got up and walked right at me. Well, there's 2 fences in between, a chain link fence and then just another fence, and it walked right towards me, and then it turned and spray peed.
That's the best.
Yeah, and I like pulled the stroller back and jumped out of the way, and it didn't get either of us, but it was really close. I mean, it peed like 10 feet. It was pretty phenomenal. But
I took my daughter at the time. I think she was probably about 4, maybe, and at the Minnesota or at the home toy line, and a girl, 4-year-old, always side of the cage.
I'm
Good
assuming it had
times.
to, I'm assuming it had something to do with its ivory tusk. That's what I was going for, Seth.
Yeah, I know. Trying to keep
All
it
right,
clean.
let's get back on track. We don't. It's after 10:15. Let's get back to the short season leagues. We're going to talk about the E-Town Twins. Obviously, they got underway. I believe was it last Wednesday or last Thursday, and it started off with a bang. Nick Gordon had 4 hits in his professional debut. He was obviously going to replace the Twins starting shortstop because he's the next big thing. What's been going on since then?
I believe for a professional baseball player, 4 games. I believe he's down in the 250 area. But of course, we're not too worried about that. We don't care what he hits in this first year. I mean, let's not forget Byron Buxton in his first year. I don't have it in front of me, but I think he had about 230 in the GCL, followed by about 250 in Elizabeth. And so, it's really just in this league, it's more about just developing as people, developing what it means to be a professional, what it means to get paid and have to pay your bills and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely goes beyond just what happens between the baseball lines.
Right, and he tweeted a picture of him with the teammate. I mean, he looked like he was still in pretty good spirits, even though he's had a rough streak. And I think obviously everybody's going to deal with that. There's probably a lot of kids that were high schoolers that were absolute studs, and then have never really dealt with a streak where they maybe didn't get a hit for 2 straight games. A lot of those guys bat 400 or 450, or you just put up video game type numbers. So for a kid like him to go struggle, but I mean, obviously he's been around the game enough where he's not gonna let it get him down. I think that's the maturity that we saw. Who knows? Maybe the streak could go on for a long time, but he just looks like he seems like the type of kid that can just bounce back. And obviously we've been waiting for that bounce back to happen. He has a huge game, and then he has four straight games where he basically gets 1 hit. Playing the shortstop a lot. I think he DH'd 1 game, but doesn't seem to have any errors, so he's doing well defensively as far as we know. But doesn't have a lot of strikeouts either. Doesn't have many walks, but he's still hitting the ball. He's just hitting it at people. So I think there's a lot of positives, even though you look at that number, especially after the first game, and say, well, geez. And like you said, we're not going to panic, but I think he's handling himself, as well as we can see from where we are. But he is going to be a more advanced kid for being a prep guy, and that's probably why the Twins had no problem moving him to Elizabeth instead of sending him down to Fort Myers.
Yeah, and again, college guys, teammates too, and he is going to play in probably 5 out of 6 games. Or, even he's going to be in there. And that, but at the same time, they have Blake Schmidt being very good. Guys playing shortstop, playing shortstop, and that they're playing Jonathan at second base, and Pat Kelly's playing about half of the time. Trey Bobber's playing a lot of first base, and then they're just moving guys around the outfield. Catchers are all going to get a pretty equal time, and you're seeing that in the Gulf Coast League too. I mean, catchers are going to catch every 3rd day because there's 3 catchers, and the high school kids who have rarely played, every day, they're going to probably play about every other day. So, yeah, I mean, we can look at the box scores, and we'll go through it here shortly. But for the most part, it's just about getting that initial experience getting a taste of what pro ball is. And then after the season, they'll go to instructional league, and then they'll be ready for spring training and their first full seasons next year.
Okay, let's bring us through the box score, man.
All right. Well, I think the story in their 9-8 10-inning loss tonight was that Michael Cedoroff made his first professional appearance. He made the start. He gave up 3 hits and 2 walks and struck out 2 in 2 2/3 innings. Did not allow a run. Sam Clay came in. He was their 4th-round pick. He went 2 1/3, gave up 3 runs on 2 hits, 2 walks, struck out 2. Derek Rodriguez came on. He gave up a run on 1 walk and 1 hit batter, but no hits in 2 innings. C.K. Irby, he gave up 2 runs, 1 of them earned on 2 hits and 2 walks in just 1 inning. And, Josue Montanez came in for the final 2 innings and gave up 3 unearned runs. The E-Twins had 5 errors tonight, which also is not unusual in the Apple League or the Gulf Coast League. Trey Bobra, he was 2 for 4 with a walk and a double. Jeremiah Pineda, he was 2 for 6, and Max Murphy 2 for 5 with a double as well. Lots of doubles in this game for the E-Twins. It's unfortunate they were actually up 5-0 in the first inning, 6-0 after 2, and kind of give it back.
Well, the thing is that team's always going to compete because they have traditionally older guys there. And, they were the champs, was it 2 years ago with the guys that are currently in Fort Myers? I think they failed to make the playoffs last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they were still 3 or 4 games over.
But I would anticipate that they definitely compete for a playoff spot as the Happy League playoffs fast approach.
I think that's expected, and it's something we've kind of grown on. I guess a perception another team league. And if you actually look at it the last few years, they've been about the same as league average, middle of the pack. So there's actually teams that are older and a couple that are a little younger, but not much.
So you're telling me I'm wrong?
I'm kind of leaning towards that without saying it out loud.
That's okay. You thought Jason Kubel was going to be awesome this year, so you can tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, quit it.
Okay, let's move over to the baby team, the Gulf Coast League Twins.
He struck out 4, and then we got some strikeout guys who came up, and the winner in this game was actually Mike, who were 2 innings. 4 in his 2 scoreless. As for the offense, Dubal Baez, he was 3 for 5 with his second double and 3 RBIs. Roberto Gonzalez, this year's 15th round pick, he was 3 for 4 with 2 doubles, his first 3 hits as a pro, and he drove in 3 runs. Gerard Poteet, he was 2 for 4 with a double. Joel Ramirez, 2 for 4 with a double. And just to be a little bit negative, Logan Wade, who was injured, is down doing rehab right now. Went 0 for 4 tonight. He's 0 for 15 in his rehab stint. So we'll see when he gets back up to Cedar Rapids.
The young Aussie?
What's that?
He's the young Aussie, right?
Yeah, I think he's about 21.
He had a separated shoulder?
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously that could affect one's swing a little bit, I would assume.
I would think so, and even just having the confidence to kind of let a swing go is probably the biggest part of that.
For sure. Let's. Do we need to say much more of that, or do we want to head over and talk Twins for the next 20 minutes?
Let's talk Twins for a little bit.
Yeah, I got a couple things we can go over that are just kind of random. But first things first, in our Twins takes time period, I guess we can call it. Oswaldo Arcia. Now, Nick Nelson had a pretty good write-up on Twins Daily about his struggles. Parker pointed out his struggles after, I want to say, Smalley pointed them out on national TV, or at least on Fox Sports. But he's been bad lately. He had a couple days to rest. He hurt his ankle on draft night. I believe was back pinch hitting the following day, which came as a surprise, and has been not right since then. Got a couple days to, I think they called it a mental break last week, and now he isn't playing tonight. Obviously, C.J. Wilson is left-handed, so you give him a break and replace him with left-handed Parmalee. But he gets a break from a left-handed guy and hopefully can try to right this ship. Seth, should he right the ship in the big leagues, or should he right the ship in the International League?
He's got to figure this out. It needs to happen here because when Smalley pointed that out on FSN about the hitch in his swing, now you can't miss it. It was clear that you could throw him a fastball up and in. Pitchers figured that out, and likely advanced scouts likely figured that out quicker. So, but he's got to make that adjustment. And yeah, I don't know. Gardy keeps saying he's trying to swing too hard. Well, I don't think that's so much it. It's just he's just got to put together good swings and good at bats. He's swinging at everything, which is what he does when he's hot too. But he's just got to figure it out, and the only way he can do that is to play.
But he's not playing now, and they're giving him days off because he is struggling. I mean, not that he's getting every other day off, but he's a young guy still. He came up last year, really before he was ready, I would say.
Yeah, there was an injury early in the year, if I remember.
Yeah, and he kind of showed the same things. He teased, he hit for some power, he struck out a ton, was shaky in the outfield. Then went down, was awesome, came back up, teased, struggled in the outfield, struck out a bunch. Kind of the same thing. Now, he's had that wrist deal. Do you think that's a factor still?
Well, if it is, he's going to be out. That's the way it is. But in my opinion, at this point, he's if I get like 45 or something, yeah, sure, send him down. That's only 4 more games or so, but it's just, this might be part of it. He doesn't ever seem to be. Maybe that's part of it. 100% mental break day. I think the way they did that was the right way to do it, and he came back from those 2 days that he missed, hit the ball really hard, but at some point you just need to, put a 1 in that hit column on day, or else it does start getting to you. And maybe all he needs is to get a little blooper or something. But he needs something to happen here, and I would say within the next week. If we're still having this conversation in a week, I mean, at that point, I'd be all in favor of sending him down.
See, I guess my thing is if he's going to get mental breaks, why not give him a mental break from the major leagues while he still has options? Give him 10 or 15 days, whatever the minimum is, in Rochester to get some confidence back, and then call him back up.
But, he was in such a slump when he went down there. It took him 2 weeks to get going again.
But that's fine. If it takes him that long, let it. That Parmalee right now is playing okay, and give Parmalee a shot. If you want to give Colabello another shot, give him another shot. Whatever, that's fine. But get him a chance to regain his confidence. And after 3 weeks of not having it, where he's not it's not just gonna magically appear. Go let him get it in Rochester.
I have no problem with that, but I think the better thing is, Parmalee play. Give him the next couple days to go. You get to the point where you have to give him another day because things are better. At this point, give him the next couple of games. If he's in Texas, maybe a small ballpark. like Texas and stuff like that. I mean, I get it. I understand what you're saying, and I don't think it's wrong. But at this point, you're already there. Let them play against next two righties, basketball guys, and just see. I mean, I'm
And
not saying keep
also,
them up forever. I'm just saying, give them this kind of one last hurrah, whether it's 2 or 4 straight games of an opportunity, and just see where he's at.
also of note, because Arcia spent a couple of years in rookie league ball, he he was added to the 40 man after his Cedar Rapids year, um, which means that his first option year was his second professional year, and his third option year, which could be this year, is only his fourth professional year. And if you use your 3 option years before you have 5 full professional seasons, you could get a fourth option year. So next year, the Twins wouldn't necessarily have to keep him all year. They could send him down if they needed to. And I don't anticipate or hope that that's an issue, but it could obviously help solve a problem if he's, continues to go through these mental, hurdles that he can't overcome, that he can go to Rochester whenever, at least through the 2015 season, they could apply for that fourth. And that would apply also to Max Kepler and Jorge Polanco, that they would get. Essentially, it's a red shirt option season. So it's kind of neat, and that typically only works out with the foreign guys that go to the DSL and then the GCL and then the Appy League, that type of thing. So just an of note to talk about.
Obviously, the longer these issues continue, the more that does come in. Ideally, the other thing to break and the mental side of the game, and we all know, as Yogi Berra said, the mental game is, or 90%. No, what is that saying? Half of the game is, or 50% of the game is 90% mental or something.
90% of the game is physical. The other half is mental.
Yeah, there you go. And I do think
that was Yogi Berra, if I'm not mistaken.
Did I say Yogi Bear?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. No, I just think the mental part of the game is tough, but and it's the long swing you have to make. That's always going to be the issue, no matter how great the prospect is. Brandon Wood was an incredible power hitting prospect in the minors. He got to the big leagues. Pitchers made that adjustment to him. To this point, Arcia has had those good runs, and then he goes in these spunks where he can't hit anything at all, and he can't make that adjustment. He's got to make that adjustment, and at some point, my point is more, it's a physical thing. As much as it is mental, it's a physical thing. It's a mechanical thing that he's just got to get worked out.
Right. It's that. It's the mental part. It's also, I think, the wrist. He probably changed some things when the wrist was not right. The ankle probably has some effect in his approach, in his swing. I mean, you compensate. Your swing is such a refined skill that if one thing isn't right, then your whole everything changes. So obviously, I think the major flaw has been located, and hopefully Bruno or whoever the guy is, Bruno, Molitor, Vavra, whoever's working with them closely can get that ironed out. The next person on the list is Kevin Correa, and he was added to the list by you. So 1980 corded phone Seth, tell us all you want to tell us about Kevin Correa.
Funny, for a while and it became just easy that I truly believe he was one from losing the job, probably to Trevor May. But in reality, we need to kind of take a step back and realize that in his last 5 starts, he's got a 2.48 ERA. In his last 3, he's gone 6 innings in each one of them, giving up 0, 1, and 1. So as much as it's easy to always want to get rid of him and do this and do that, right now is not the time. He's actually building some trade value while at the same time helping the Twins win. And right now, I know that a lot of us, myself included, are always talking about, let's play the guys that are going to be around, and obviously most likely he's not going to be around next year. But while you're still in it, I mean, as much as I'm for development and minor leaguers getting a chance and all of that, I know I got kind of tired of watching the team the last 3 years, and this year, if nothing else, he's been okay the last 3 or 4 or 5 starts. Let's keep the guy that's doing well and try to keep winning some games. I mean, maybe they're not going to compete. Maybe by mid-July it'll be obvious that they need to trade players off, and at that point, go ahead and do it. But until then, it's always easy to replace the guy, and the guy in the minor leagues is always the one that looks, the most exciting. And I think we just need to take a step back and say, hey, Kevin Correa is doing things right now. You can't forget what happened in the first 8 or 10 starts, but you need to just say, okay, right now is not the time. Trevor May will get up here, but right now is not the time.
Right, and I think the other thing that should be pointed out too is when Kevin Correa signed that deal, 2 years, $10 million, that paid him $4.5 last year and $5.5 this year. People hated that deal, and I mean I haven't been on his Fangraphs page to see exactly what he's valued at, but I would say when all is said and done, he far exceeded those contract terms. So we also got a comment here that from Ben Mitchell, who's been watching for 30 minutes. More than half of what Seth says is not able to be heard. So
that's probably a good.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it though. I guess we'll see how they are.
Say what's going on. We're doing things. We did everything the same way last week when we were using my phone and things like that. And it's just, we know what's going on. I hope we have it ready to go by next week too.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's done a Google Hangout, there's really not a whole lot you do. You set up a Hangout, it opens up this audio or this video box, and you have a conversation with someone. It's like Skype or anything else. When we opened up our video boxes today, Seth started talking. He usually, says hello or something like that, and I heard him and I said, "What's up?" And then he says, "Hello," and I said, "What's up?" And he's like, "I can't hear you." So then I, mumbled some things I probably shouldn't have, and my ear bit falls out. And then, we tried some other things and restarted devices and did all sorts of fun stuff. And now I'm talking to his landline phone, and we're going to hope that it records our audio so that at least the people that download later on iTunes can, enjoy a halfway intelligent conversation. Or at least half of a halfway intelligent conversation. So yeah, download us on iTunes if you can only hear half of what Seth says, and then let us know how that sounds, because I'm guessing it'll sound better. Johan Pino. Now, I didn't get to watch his debut because I did get to watch a little bit, only like the last inning or two that he pitched, because I was performing on the auditorium big stage as a dancer, as a dancing dad. You do that too. Do you have a performance that you?
Yeah, we're not going to put it on video. That would just not be good.
It's on video.
Oh.
Right or not?
No.
Oh, because they hire this videographers, and then we have to buy the video. But there's no proof of you dancing?
I hope not.
That's too bad. I would really like to see that because Bonus is he's pretty good.
Yeah, I like the thing with the arms.
Yeah.
I didn't really get it. It was very nice.
So I mean, you could at least dance as good as Bonus.
You would like to think so, but I wouldn't guarantee it.
Okay, if you're down in Cedar Rapids, and you run into Steve and Seth at the Bushwood, is it the Bushwood?
Yep.
See if you can get a quarter in Seth and make him dance.
That would be
That should be everyone's challenge if you're in Cedar Rapids this weekend. So I didn't get to see it, but I tried to follow along on Twitter a little bit. He was striking people out. He was getting people to ground out. I believe I saw, and not a lot of hard contact. Is that about accurate?
That's fair to say. I mean, a guy that had to wait 2 extra hours to make his major league debut 10 years after signing. We talked about it last week. The story itself is great, and we'll see how long that it lasts. But I mean, 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. I think 1 walk or no walks, maybe one. But I mean, he used the defense, but he also got strikeouts. And what I saw was a guy who 1 works fast, 2 throws strikes, 3 has a fastball that's 88 to 90. It did touch 90 and 91 once or twice, so it doesn't throw hard, but he gets movement on it. And then you saw the changeup that he used later in the game that I thought was pretty impressive. He was able to control it, but that tailed away from a lefty. And then he had a slow curve and a slider. And to me, you got 4 pitches. You can be a decent, and I still see him, if he is going to be a big leaguer for some period of time, it's kind of in that role he's been as a minor league pitcher, and that's as a swingman. I don't know that he'd be the kind of guy you'd have starting all the time, but I saw enough to say, you know what, if this is the real him, and obviously we need more than 1 start to determine that, I mean, I could see that being a guy who could have that long reliever type of role.
I think when we get to the end of the season, Pino's going to be a guy that's kind of in that category. Does he get outrighted off the roster along with a bunch of other people, or does he stick around? I mean, is that the fair category to put him in?
I mean, at this point, I would still say most likely he's outright. In fact, right. I would say it wouldn't surprise me if that happens in the next weeks, because he's not seen as a prospect. At the same time, as long as it's working, that's we've talked about it before. As long as it's working, he deserved the opportunity. He deserved the opportunity for people to prove his scouting reports wrong or right. At the big league level, good. He should keep going, and if he's not, he'll get sent down again. But yeah, I still definitely fit. He'll fit into that very questionable to keep on the 40-man roster because he's not a guy that teams are going to add to their 40-man rosters in the offseason.
Right, and I guess for me, I wouldn't outright him during the year because at this point, I mean, we've seen what he's done at AAA. There's a lot of teams he could help out in AAA, and be a type of guy that could make a spot start. At this point, this is his first big league experience. If they don't want to keep him in the big leagues, which at this point there's no reason not to because he's pitched well in his only appearance, just option him down. And then if you want to move him during the giant roster purge, move him then. But I think he's got enough value as a pitcher, even if it isn't that swing role, that he's a league minimum guy next year. And a league minimum guy that can take the ball, has a rubber arm based on what he did over the winter, pitched a ton, can pitch on short rest and pitch long out. There's value in that, even though, like you said, he's not a prospect. So I hope he sticks around. If he finds a niche in the Twins bullpen, great. If he's in Rochester again next year, just waiting, for a chance, I'm fine with that. I guess Andrew Albers kind of peaked and then didn't really do much after that, but I guess that's kind of the parallel that I draw, even though they're different guys. I kind of see, the same type of thing that we saw with him.
Yeah,
Albers.
That was kind of an assumption, I guess, I was making, but Albers' fastball changeup. Ball control, he needed to be spot at a third pitch, whereas with Pino, that guy's a he knows how to pitch. He knows how to do the control things that Albers did. Plus, he does have the 4 pitches. So, I don't think they're really in the same category. Although I think what you're saying is he's not a guy that throws real hard. He relies on his command. He relies on his control, and he obviously didn't make his big league debut till later in his career. So I mean, there are plenty of similarities, but I guess I see more potential, if that's the right thing to say, about a 30-year-old in Pino at this point. But again, it's one start. He's going to start tomorrow night against the Angels, and we may have a completely different feeling on Thursday.
Right. The ceiling floor with Albers, we saw something that was very, very close to his ceiling right away, and his floor was pretty low. I mean, a soft tossing lefty with 2 pitches. That's pretty low. Um, a guy that has a little bit more in his repertoire, maybe a little bit better. So yeah, I mean that's the parallel that I drew, and I guess we'll see what happens. The next thing, Kyle Gibson's streak, 21 innings entering tonight, I believe.
That ended pretty quickly.
Yes, it did. And yeah, it did. Multiple times.
So let me just spend a minute talking about the streak itself before I get to the part about how it ended. And that's to say, in 3 starts, he threw 21 innings without giving up a run. He gave up just 10 hits and 5 walks, and he struck out 8 of which came in his most recent. Opponents just 139 over that time with a 375 OPS, and we talk about like Kevin Correa's ERA right now is 5.02. Well, 3 starts ago, or before 3 starts ago, Kyle Gibson's ERA was 4.35, and those 3 starts later it was 3.25, and I don't know what it's at now. It might be back to 4.35 after giving up 7 runs, I believe.
I think I saw 3.92.
Okay, so it jumped up there again. I mean, only 2 innings tonight, so. That's the ups and downs. Those moments when you see for a good period of time. I mean, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs, and he's not going to be a true number one like what we saw from Verlander several years ago. So he's going to have the days like tonight, but for the most part, I think you can kind of count on him a little bit to be fairly solid. And it will continue. I mean, we're 14, 15 starts into his season. But I guess I've been, if not impressed, at least encouraged that he's got a chance based on what we're seeing.
Yeah, him and Hughes both, I think, at the beginning of the year, if you were asked, well, where does Kyle Gibson fit into a rotation 1 through 5? What would you have said?
I would have probably said 4 with the chance.
And what do you say right now?
3.
So you don't feel any different about him. You still feel like he's a 4-ish.
Potential, yeah.
How about Hughes?
I just think he's proven it. I think that the track record is starting to get enough so that we can maybe believe it a little bit more too.
What do you think about Hughes? What would you have said at the beginning of the year?
I think a 4-ish with the ability to be a 3, and maybe an outside ability to be a 2, like a long shot ability to be a 2. I think right now he's absolutely a 2. I mean, with what he's doing right now, I mean, the biggest thing I noticed, I was looking at his stats, his career stats versus this year. The things home runs are down and walks are down. And he was only at like 2.6 walks per 9 innings in his career. He's at 0.8 walks per 9 right now. I believe his home run rate is down about in half. It never was real high. Yeah, it actually was. It was like 1.5 per 9. Now it's like 0.7 or 0.8 per 9. But, I mean, those are the 2 numbers that are really encouraging. He's going to give up hits because he throws a ton of strikes, but he's throwing good strikes, and they're not hitting the ball real hard off of him. So I'm encouraged. He's not a number 1, but no. I think he's a solid number 2 right now.
He made a comment during the broadcast yesterday or Sunday, and I don't exactly remember what what he said, but it was something along the lines of, my stuff is good enough right now that I'm going to throw strikes because even if I miss my spot, my stuff is good enough where a lot of bad things aren't going to happen. Which, I mean, if you can have that sort of confidence as a pitcher, that's huge.
Right.
Because even if something bad happens, I mean, his mentality is at this point, well, I missed and something bad happened, but that's not going to happen again. And maybe that little bit, maybe that mental difference is the difference between being a number two, a frontline guy, and a mid rotation guy. And I think at this point, Phil Hughes is a front of the rotation guy, not a number one, but I'd feel pretty confident going into a playoff series and knowing that he's going to make a start. And I think at the end of the day, if you have three guys that can do that, you're in pretty good shape. And Gibson, before tonight, I probably would have felt okay. But after tonight, I don't know. I mean, so we got a game 2 starter and a game 3 starter. That's a problem because we don't have a game 1 starter.
Right, and even when we did have or we as in the Twins had a game 1 starter, it didn't necessarily mean for a lot of years, and that didn't. I mean,
Right.
I think I feel comfortable with at this point. And the rest of the rotation, I mean, they just kind of have to keep improving.
Right. And hope that Alex Meyer or Trevor May develops into one of those type of guys.
Right.
Want to talk about the All-Star game a little bit? I think Brian Dozier's fifth for catcher or fifth for second baseman, pretty far back. Suzuki's fourth or fifth for catchers, way far back. Joe Mauer's not on the board for first base. Is there anything else to say about that?
There is, you know, talked a lot about them. A rough week, even though it hasn't been terrible. It's been a little rougher than I tend to forget. That's not unusual for closers. I mean, we saw it with Nathan, we saw it with Cordato, we saw it with Aguilera. You know, they would have those stretches during the course of the year, and you're like, are they ever going to come out of this? What they always do. Perkins is bad right now, and you know that he's not going to be fast. So that's definitely encouraging. I still think Perkins kind of a given. And after that, you know, it's going to depend on, you know, somewhat what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, I'm writing these down. Your predictions as of 6/24. Perkins, All-Star or not?
Yes.
Dozier, All-Star or not?
I think he will be on the vote.
Ooh, I like what you're doing there.
The what do you call it? The manager's vote or something like that. I don't think he will get. Yeah, I don't think he'll get named to it, but I think he'll be of the 5 players that fans.
Okay, so you're taking a fan vote for Brian Dozier.
Yep.
Suzuki.
I would say.
And Phil Hughes.
Lee.
Okay. I'm gonna
2 with a possible 3rd.
I'm gonna say Dozier's a no, and I'm gonna say that because I think Cano is the leader right now. I don't think that Farrell leaves Pedroia home, even though he should. And Altuve's got to be the Astro. Yeah, Dallas Keuchel. But I think it's going to be Altuve because his numbers have been ridiculous. Springer, yeah. I don't think will. I think Springer's kind of in that Puig category like last year where it's like, well, he hasn't been up long enough. But we do need to talk about Springer. That was one of the questions that we had. So we'll come back to that. I'm going to say Dozier's a no. I'm going to say Suzuki's a no. I'm going to say Perkins is a yes, he's my only guaranteed yes. And I'm going to say Hughes is a yes as of right now. So I'm taking 2, but no chance for a position guy.
The final 5. Who else is in there?
Here's a question for you.
Yeah,
The manager decides the 5 guys on the ballot.
I believe so.
The manager, or the staff.
I don't know.
Is there a chance Mauer's on that list?
No.
Not even a little chance.
No.
Not even if Gardy's got to say.
What's Gardy's case?
He's Joe Mauer. It's in Minnesota. This is the house that Joe built.
Yeah.
If Derek Jeter's here, he's not very good. Let's make sure Mauer's here too. He's the ambassador.
Yeah.
He's Joe Mauer. Do the Twins have anybody in the home run derby?
I think Willingham has a chance, but I would doubt it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Brian Dozier in there. Who was it? Hamilton?
Yeah, I seem to have heard that. I don't think he would.
No, I don't either.
I don't think he's got a fighting chance. If they had a contest for who can hit the ball off the right field wall, though, I'm taking Sam Fold in a ball off the right field wall derby. For sure. He's like Denard Span with like 20 feet less power. All right. Do we want to talk about Joe Mauer at all? He can't track the pitches as a catcher, so that's why he's struggling as a hitter.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
But then when he was asked about it, he was like, "It's different. It's just different. I'm a first baseman now. It's different."
It is.
I don't either. Couple things we got to get to. Twins Future 24 wanted to look back at the George Springer drafting. Obviously, the Twins drafted Springer out of high school in like the 50th round. He didn't sign. He went to UConn, and now he's Springer Dinger all over the place. But could have at one point been a Twin. The other name that he brought up that I had not heard, obviously international guys, you're in on some, you're out on others, was Gregory Polanco. He had heard was a guy that the Twins had pursued. Polanco wasn't a big money guy and had struggled in the Gulf Coast League and had struggled and eventually kind of made his way up to the majors, and now he was a top prospect in baseball. But what could have been if the Twins would have had George Springer? How does his development path? How does what he do as a baseball player? How is it different than how it currently is? How could it be the same? How would that change anything if he was in the Twins system?
College. So, I think he would have had a chance to move up, but he switched to GCL. He was late. He went very fast. He went 2 years in GCL. He got about 50 years draft just to get to the point of where he got up to. So, he probably, athletically, he probably would have been exactly the same. But for him, I think it was the right decision to go to college. He got a chance to play every day and be kind of a big man, whereas with the Twins and in any minor league system at that point, he really wouldn't have been. I got to go find a battery charger because I'm about to lose my phone. So, what do you think on that one?
What do I think on George Springer? He had some swing and miss issues in UConn. Was a very toolsy guy throughout his career there. Didn't even progress real quick through the system. And then had the rumored deal that he was offered and said no. Said no and stayed in the minors. obviously he's been a stud recently, and he's hitting a lot of home runs and looked great at Target Field when he was in the cities just a couple weeks ago. Um, but if the Twins had everybody that they drafted at one point, your team would be pretty fantastic, and everybody's would because you pass on, you just can't sign guys out of high school. That's kind of the thing. Um, I remember
The
the
top four, five, six.
right. It's actually funny watching the Twins play the Angels because the guy that I loved in that draft um, was a little white kid that wasn't real well known out of the East Coast because the rain and the season kind of got wiped out. Um, but then I also liked the pitchers that were the high upside pitchers like Kyle Gibson. And then when Gibson dropped, I was real excited that they took him, even though the guy that I really liked was still on the board, Mike Trout. He's worked out okay for the Angels, I would say. So, you win some, you lose some. I know the Twins actually, his dad, I want to say, was in the Twins system at one point. Um, so, and the scout that signed him was a roommate. I think that's how the scout that signed Mike Trout was a low minor league roommate of Mike Trout's dad for the Twins.
It was Shane Mount.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's some of his minor league cards.
So, I mean, it's one of those deals that you win some, you lose some. The Twins obviously knew that Springer's talented. I'm guessing that 30 teams knew that when he came out of high school. It just so happened that the Twins rolled the dice at 50. Really no chance to get him to sign. The next thing was there was a update on Byron Buxton today. Dry swings off the tee, dry swings, and light tee work. Asked if surgery would be.
I would say a little bit before, assuming everything goes well. Before. I wouldn't expect that until into August a little bit. We don't know how the beginning of it sounds either, so it's all good. Yeah, I would say there's not a lot of positives about going Alex Money right now. It almost supports your theory of moving into the bullpen and with the Twins to get him